the Lord's horse. So he took the leg of the horse off and then put it on, and then put it on in the Lord. This is God's horse, no ordinary flight. And in his hand, he's got the hammer. It looks like a mushroom, but it can't be. And there's an inscription in very old French that says, "We don't have the key." So, there's a blurb for some of the books that we've written. We write about this in The Hidden World, pointing out that it was only in the major cities that were Christianized. The country people persisted in the old religion. The country people were called the Pagani, and the religion is called, oh, that's the old superstition, it's paganism. In another book recently, we look at the god Dionysus, the god of wine, and argue that the fermentation process is a controlled fungal process, and it has to be understood as the evolution of the science of fermentation producing a civilized intoxicating drink from primitive antecedents. And the most primitive antecedent of the cultivated yeast is the wild mushroom. Here you see a woman showing what looks like a mushroom to a priest to be put into a rack that's on the other side of the base. But when the museum director found out that we were interested in mushrooms, he said, "You can't use that image." He couldn't stop us. But no, you can't use it. Why? Because it's dirty. You can't talk about things like that. So very briefly, because it takes many hours to talk about Dionysus, but there's one essential thing to know about him, and that is the emblem of the women who were getting close to being hear me, who were possessed by him were called Bacchants, and the emblem of what they're doing is what you see in the god's hand there. It's the wand called the thyrsus. And I was able to find in ancient botanical sources, you all know when you pick a magical plant, you have to treat it with reverence. You have to have a special container to put it in. And so this is the special container in which you put the plants that you were gathering. So they were gathering herbs. That's what they were doing. The Greek term for it.
Hello.
Yay! You're amplifying.
Great.
Just keep it with us here.
Now you hear me better? Got it?
More. Be careful with that cord.
Okay, am I okay? Can't move.
Put that box in there.
Can I have a little more? That's good. Okay. Now you hear me, right? No, now you hear me. No.
Swing into the side of it, maybe? No, it's off now. The light went off on that, so it's that little thing.
Now you hear me. Sort of hear me. Well, that sounds better. Okay. Well, there she is. The Greeks call them root cutters.
Oh no, it's just.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So, very quickly, because we have many more things to talk about, much more interesting than this, but as a matter of fact, the mushroom in common culinary nomenclature, the stem of the mushroom was called its thyrsus, not its stag. The psychoactive cap of Lamina muscaria represents the thing stuffed into it. And it was a metaphor, the common name for the mushroom for over 1,000 years.
Hey Carl, we got the pointer I can click for you while you hold the mic. Or you want to do it?
Maybe I should go over there and do it.
Oh, here.
I think I have too much to handle if I do that.
You're doing fine.
Okay, so nobody knows about that. You all know that the entrance to a Christian church is called the narthex. Another name for the thyrsus was the narthex. Narthex means the container for the narcotic. It means the drug container. And the front of a Christian church is a narthex. Narthex was used as the title for various books of drug lore in antiquity, a compendium of drugs. You entered sacred space through the medicine cabinet. But you don't know that. Working. Okay, when? Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, most people walking through the door of the church are unaware of the fact that even if you don't have the central moan, it's a mushroom. But that is imaginary. But not here. Above the two hemicircles is a mushroom. You ask anyone in Avila, what is that up there? And they'll say, oh, it's a mushroom, but I don't know what it's doing there. We've looked at other examples of art. I'm not doing too bad. We looked at a church in Saxony, northern Germany, in the Kaliskirche, St. Bernward. Beautiful wooden plank, the ceiling painted, the tree of Jesse, and at the top of it is the scene in Eden. Christ is already present, watching the temptation, and the serpent's there. Why is Christ watching? Because you're supposed to eat it, dummy. But you don't know it. Only the special people who know that. And the apples, the red apples of the tree, are embossed, and one of them actually has, looks like a mushroom. And of course, the cast is strongly suggestive of the Amulet Mysteria. Another great work of art that we looked at is Gundeval's Isenheim altarpiece, where St. Anthony in the desert is being visited by the hermit Paul, and a raven is bringing what he's going to eat in the desert. It is a piece of raven's bread. The raven's bread is a metaphor for the Amanita Muscaria. The scene also has an image on the ground of Amanita Muscaria. The raven was the first stage in the initiation in Mithraism. The candidate dressed up as a raven, and everybody hooted and hollered. I think we lost an image, but this image of raven's bread persists. You can see it all the time, but you're unaware of what it means. It is actually an emblem of the French Revolution and of the U.S. Army. That same altarpiece has many levels of presentation. You have Christ bursting from the enclosed tomb. And from this image to the same altarpiece, are you hearing me? Because if I use the microphone, I don't speak so loud. If I speak louder with the microphone, I may cause trouble. But can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. We have an interesting scene. We have Virgin Mary with baby Jesus, his wash basin, and that cup beneath the wash basin is his vase de nuit, his pee potty, and then if you look your way up on the pedestal, there's a flask of amber liquid, a special elixir. It's the sacred pea of baby Jesus. Why the sacred pea? Magnesium muscaria passes through the body and produces a better metabolite in the urine. Peter's hot. I think I was afraid Peter would say, no, you're all wrong.
That's that fly.
Okay, another work of art, very quickly. Titian's Bacchanal of the Andrians. The baby Bacchus there, next to his wife. She's a bit older and rather sexy. She's spreading her legs. And he's peeing into a river. The myth illustrated is once a year the god visited the island of Andros, and the villagers had a bacchanal, and the river of the island turned into wine, and they got drunk. And so he's peeing. Those women there are ladling it up. But you notice something strange is going on. That film list of barriers, there are two levels of reality here. There are the people and the deities, and the deities' entourage. They don't see that. That's another reality that's there at the same time. They scoop up the pea, and it turns into that elixir, and there's an alchemist in the background. Isn't it obscene? I had to tell you that one of my students wrote a letter to the president of the university saying he shows dirty pictures. No, they're not dirty, they're disturbing. Do you need a drug to have a religious experience? No. Albert Hoffman, before he experienced LSD, in his autobiography, LSD, My Problem Child, described an occurrence when he was walking in the Alps and he had this mystical experience. And later, when he discovered LSD, he realized that that was the experience he had with LSD. Only he now could control it. And with his friend, a novelist, he took trips. He came to realize that it was the same experience as a moment in the mountains, but with practice it deepened and could be controlled. With the German novelist Ernst Jünger, he sought out marvelous journeys of the soul to exotic lands. Remember the paintings of Titian, the two levels of reality, there at the same time. Think of what's going on here that you don't know. I had the feeling that I saw the earth in the beauty of nature as it had been when it was created at the first day of creation. It was a beautiful experience. I was reborn seeing nature in quite a new light. But later in life, he said, I know LSD. I don't need to take it anymore. Maybe when I die. Saint Teresa of Calcutta, I don't mean to imply that she took a drug, but she had one beatific moment. The Lord spoke to her and never spoke to her again. And she lived her life in agony, wondering why she had been abandoned. Houston Smith, great authority on world religions, says that after studying mysticism and all the texts, he never understood what it was. And then with an entheogen, he knew. But then he said, but once I know, I don't need it anymore. The Good Friday experiment, performed in 1962, the year before I got to Boston University, at Marsh Chapel. Divinity students who should know something about divinity and God in a blind test were given psilocybin, and they testified that what they thought was a religious experience. The same experiment has been repeated recently at Johns Hopkins University. The doors of perception can be opened. My first experience as a graduate student, I didn't realize, but I read it pretty much the year it was published was Aldous Huxley's classic book on his drug experience, The Doors of Perception. And I thought, oh, I'll never get to experience that though. Susan Smith, using the same metaphor, wrote Cleansing the Doors of the Experience. Where does this come from? William Blake, man has closed himself up, this is the cave. Till he sees all things through narrow chinks of his cavern. In the doors of perception, if the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear as it is, infinite. So, okay, that's bad enough. Now I can step on some toes. But I'm not making this up. This is the official hagiography of the Mormon Church, documented by a couple of two groups of Mormon scholars. And so let's take a look at Mormonism, because if the Entheogens was at the beginning of religion, what happens when you have new religions founded? Everyone, I'll go through this very quickly. Everyone knows that he was wandering through the forest looking for hidden gold and magically found golden plates. They were inscribed with a language that he couldn't read, but an angel appeared and instructed him, gave him a special pair of glasses so he could see it too, and it was the language of the aboriginal inhabitants of this continent. It was Egyptian. Really? Well, it was strange writing. Could have been Egyptian, but what people are unaware of is that digging for hidden gold is a metaphor for being a rhizotomos, a root cutter, looking for herbal remedies. So let's, when he first, the story is very complicated and very beautiful, but when he first found it, he was afraid to touch it. And the reason, this is the official hagiography of the church, the reason he was afraid to touch it is because a giant toad was sitting on it. I don't think I have to remind you that toad gland secretion is similar to psilocybin. Or DMT. So let's look at the plates. There they are. But those are, of course, forgeries, because the angel took them back after they were translated. He found it in a cave on this hill in New York. It's a glacial deposit. There can't be a cave. It would have been forested. A good place for mushrooms to grow. You can't have a cave there. What was he doing? Well, first of all, you assume that people living in the wilderness had no contact with the indigenous people. Of course not. The indigenous people knew about herbs and plants. Life was hard. Ask the Indian, what's good for this? Ask the old lady what we should do. They exchanged ideas. And in fact, in his digging for gold, he had a liberated African as his assistant. It's not hard to conclude that the gold plates are a metaphor for something more apt to be found growing on the hill with a toad sitting on it as if it were a toadstool. How weird. Maria Sabina, who's the shaman that, a Mazatec shaman that my colleague Gordon Wasson investigated, she was totally illiterate. But she divulged to Wasson the fact that although she was Christianized, she had continued an indigenous rite with mushroom, a divinatory mushroom, and but she was totally illiterate, and yet tissue hagiography in the town square of Huatla de Jimenez. They're very proud of the wealth she has brought to this town. Although she died in great poverty, the cultural center, there's the raven delivering the bread, and there's the book. She found the book. She couldn't read it. She signed her name with her fingerprint. When the mushrooms taught, and she said, when the mushrooms taught me the road of God, and they handed over the sacred book of knowledge, there it is, official hagiography, I heard these words, the world is yours, you can no longer turn back. So what about books you can't read? What about Moses and the 12 Commandments written by the finger of God on the stone? Moses, of course, carried the stones up the mountain, right? He didn't know they would be written. Of course not, besides they're heavy. He found them on the mountain, all right? But they were written with the finger of God. What language were they written in? Well, Hebrew, right? Hebrew did not have a writing system at the time of Moses. They used the Phoenician glyphs, and that is about 400 years after Moses. And so, if they were written with the hand of God, the only writing they could have been in was Egyptian, because Moses was the Egyptian prince. So let's check them. No, he threw them away, and he got mad. And the ones that are preserved in the Ark are like the Mormon tablets. I don't mean to offend anyone. But back to Joseph Smith. The testimony of the church is that while the Master was still alive, when they had the Sunday service, the heavens on schedule opened up, and the angels walked through and talked with them. When Joseph Smith died, the secret of the elixir passed with him, and the Mormon Church is staunchly against drugs. Not hard to see that the markings on the cap of the Muscaria could look like writings, especially if a common form of writing would have been cuneiform. And as for the Smith family, they got into a lot of trouble. The neighbors thought that they were drunkards and drug addicts. In the National Register, the Ephrata cloister, they were German theosophists, and they lived a very pious life. It's in the National Register. Their brand of theosophy goes back to Jakob Böhm, and here's one of his illustrations. It's the Testament of Christ, it's the Eucharist. It's a very complex symbol. It's like the one I showed you of the fly and so forth. It's for the instruction of the initiate. So let me initiate you. You don't see the mushroom there, right? We use it as the cover of that book. As for what happened, history of this sect, and it says that they locked themselves up in a special chamber, and they flagellated their bodies, they fasted, for 40 days. And they had special elixirs. And on the final fourth day, the master gave them the special elixir, and the heavens opened up, and they talked with the deities. On the penultimate day of this ordeal, he was given 10 drops of the elixir of life, which this author says was known as the Grand Master's elixir. So, what about all these religious ecstasies experienced by various denominations of the Christian Church? They go century after century. I won't go through the details of them since you don't know about them. I'm going to push them up. But most of you know about the Shakers because they shake, and the Quakers because they quake. I go to the Shaker, and she said, no, you got it all wrong. In North America, the Shakers and Quakers, it is difficult, as one authority notes, to draw the line between religious ecstasy and complete nervous collapse. Their founder was weird. She'd had many children, but she hated sex, and so they were celibate. And I'm not saying this is impossible, because I know people, mystics, they do strange things. They come up to you and say, who's that person behind you? Oh, I didn't see that person. But maybe some of you see that person behind you now. But, so there are people who do see ordinarily beyond this film. Accounts of their ecstatic camp meetings describe divine services where women enter such violent spasms that they strip themselves naked and jump into rivers, swooning away by the hundreds, worn out by ravings and fits, sometimes aborting from the exertions or running on all fours and growling like animals. This mushroom gathering thing is like the old style Bible camp, right? It's not so pleasant with the rain and everything, but we're having a great time. But you're unaware of the fact that those were very ecstatic gatherings. And in fact, the 19th century musical Bible camp meeting and utopian communal egalitarian settlements served as models for the hippies of the psychedelic revolution. Of course, we were here in Woodstock, although the ecstatic rivalist religions are noted for their staunch opposition of chemically modified experience. This is, however, contrary to the origins. As Clement, the saint of Alexandria, said, under oath, deny it, because you will ruin it. There's an East Coast, I'm almost finished, but I won't give you time. I'll give you my ideas. East Coast version of it, a West Coast version of it, which clearly is an incorporation, as I've said all along, of indigenous traditions. You can trace it back. Their origins come from a hill in the UK, which is a notorious place for witches and so forth. But let me, two more examples, and see what you think about my ratings. I come from a town near Boston, Hull, and one of the sons of one of the first persons who came over on the Mayflower, so back at the beginning of our country. He's noted for a strange occurrence. He started consorting with the indigenous people, and it's in the official history of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Isaac Allerton. They met on a place near the shore, south of Boston, called Marymount, which is a pun. It's Montmer, mountain by the sea, but we have fun here. And what they did was dance with the fairy people. They were, in fact, sharing their culture with the indigenous people. They were teaching the Indian maidens about the Bacchants. And let's have a bacchanalia. Let's educate them. Let's make them European. He was accused, he traded with the native people.
Morton? Thomas Morton?
Yeah.
Thomas Morton. I don't know this. Who's Allerton?
Oh no, it's Allerton.
What happened to Thomas Morton?
I don't know about Thomas
Morton
Morton.
was married now, but a short story by
I don't know, but it's definitely Allerton. But I'll check. It's great to have. As I said, my colleagues could handle this better than I could. And I really deferred to Peter's great knowledge. So let me just conclude with one more example, and that is the Church of Scientology, which is definitely against drugs. And yet, L. Ron Hubbard was a member of the Round Table Foundation, a group investigating psychic experience in a laboratory in Maine, and Andrea Puharich, many of you may know this book, wrote about a strange occurrence in which a Dutch artist was handed a cartouche, Egyptian cartouche, and suddenly, he was a mystic before this happened, but he kept it a secret. He suddenly remembered a whole existence. He went on to remember many episodes of his existence, who he was and so forth. There were 2 time periods in which he existed. And also that the Egyptians had a sacrament that was the Amulet Mascaria. And since, I mention this because, of course, I think mystics really do see through the veil. And Harry was not lying. But I mention it because the members of the Round Table, because of this, were eating Amulet Mascaria. And L. Ron Hubbard was a member of the Round Table. And so was Aldous Huxley, and so was George Wallace, the Vice President of the United States. But they wouldn't be doing something like that. It's dirty. So, as for L. Ron Hubbard, his son said his father took every drug he could get his hand on. So, despite the chorus of denials, entheogens were at the origins of religions, both the most ancient experience of the cave and of newer ones forged for the interplanetary, this is the theology of Scientology, journey into outer space. Okay. Forget all that, because it couldn't be true. And as I say to my best friends, after you have made your argument to yourself and convinced yourself that you're right, you must always say to yourself, but of course, I may have it all wrong. I might even say that perhaps we aren't here. We only think we're here. Okay. So, what can I ask? What would you like to ask? What can my friends help me answer? Peter.
I just want to clear up this point about Thomas Morton.
Do we have a mic? Can we pass the mic around?
I don't know who Allerton is, but I'm going to look him up.
Yeah.
But I studied this school.
I know Allerton because the hill next to my house is Allerton Hill.
Well, maybe he was a friend of Morton.
Yeah, I don't know.
Morton was the one who was mentioned by
The people here,
No.
Peter is remembering that Isaac Allerton, should be Thomas Morton. Should be Thomas Morton, and I may be wrong.
Yeah, well, my references are the Hawthorne story about Marymount, which mentions Thomas Morton. Thomas Morton, who wrote a book called New Canaan, and Bradford's account of busting them. And they sent the Miles Standish over to Marymount and busted them all while they were dancing around the maypole with the Indians.
Okay,
And I don't know who Allerton was, but I'll check up on it.
so it's very easy to check because all we do now is open up
Who's got a-
all we do is open up our computer and find out who Thomas Morton was. But anyway, before we check, because all we do that, what else would you like to ask? Yeah. Because of the noise and the humidity and everything, let's use the mic.
I had a comment and I had a question. My one comment is just, well, first of all, thank you so very much. It's so amazing to have you three in the same space and to be at this conference. It's really awesome. And I really appreciate you all being here. My one comment is just that, and I think what you show is really, really powerful, and you use mostly the Christian context, but that I myself was recently in Egypt a few weeks ago, and I remember I was with someone who was taking me through the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. We walked outside, and in Cairo you're able to see examples of Christianity, of Islam, and of Pharaonic Egypt, all together in the same place. And we looked out and you could see in the same line a minaret, and you could see a chapel, you could see sort of like the pillar of a chapel, and you could see sort of an obelisk, all in the same place. And it was really amazing to me to have this sense of just that all of these religions and all of these times, they all think that they're so unique, and they all think that they're so different and distinguished. But at the same time, they have all of these, it's like the same dreaming, it's the same connection, it's the same origins. And I think it's just really beautiful, your work and how you've brought that to light. But it's just so evident throughout the world, for me anyway, at least. And that's my comment. And my question is, where is Jonathan Ott? And if you know where he is, or
I have his email address.
wow,
So if you give me your email address, I'll give it.
I would so
I have Jonathan Ott's email address. I don't know where he is, but I have his email address. Yeah, Egypt. I decided to go to Egypt in October, and people are, me too. So we're going to be 9 people going to Egypt together.
You were mentioning L. Ron Hubbard and his use of psychoactive drugs, and I know L. Ron Hubbard was involved with Jack Parsons during the Babylon working. Is there any specific literature or anything like that? Were hallucinogens in play during the Babylon working, or was it more of a straight semi-sober occult ritual? Specifically, if Hubbard was using it that often, I would imagine that Jack Parsons, considering he was doing a Gnostic mass every day in his bedroom, supposedly, if Hubbard was involved with it, I'm sure Parsons had to be too. Is there any evidence of that, or any literature on that?
I thank you for bringing that to my attention too. I haven't looked into it, and I will.
Oh, yeah, you'll get a kick out of it.
Any other questions?
I got one.
Cool, come through. Or pronounce the well if you want.
Is there any evidence of the use of the sclerotia from the Mexicana species in Maria Sabina's area? Or were they generally just using fruit bodies?
Did everyone hear that?
Is Mark here?
No.
Mark,
Where's Mark?
Mark, come back.
Mark!
Yeah, no, not that I know of. Just fruiting bodies, as far as I know. Just to speak to that really quickly, just south of here, there's a town called Tuckahoe, and that's named after a native name referring to one of what could have been a few hundred underground growing organisms. And it seems like there were aspen trees we could have had sclerotia edible. So I forget these things they make. So just throw that in. Yeah, there's good peppermint syrup inside. Try to find more of it.
Any other questions?
So, if I'm right, what does it mean?
What do you think it means?
I think that there is a film. I think there are many entities in this same chamber, and I think it has nothing to do with God.
What do you think it has?
What do you think it means?
I try not to draw conclusions in terms of faith or belief. I don't believe in belief.
A little closer. A little closer.
If I get close, I get fever.
It's the size of it.
The side. The side.
I try not to believe in belief. I'm interested in knowledge. So when I study religion, I don't ask the question as to whether there is a real God behind it or not. I want to know what the believers of that religion believe in, because as a phenomenologist, that interests me a great deal. And as for the question of the ultimate truth or validity of it, I reserve that question. And of course, the wonderful thing about the entheogens is that you can get real knowledge from them. You get real experience. And if experience isn't knowledge, I don't know what it would be. So I guess that's my answer.
I have various friends that are high in the hierarchy of churches, and they have no trouble with what I'm saying. But that's all I say. I have very high-ranking people who are my friends in various churches and knights of the church and so on, and they have no trouble with what I'm saying. But I don't think they're taking drugs. As Albert said, I don't need it anymore.
So, in your opinion, if there was this connection, there's this original connectivity between entheogens and what we consider to be religions. The initial separation between the very direct relationship with these various substances in various cultures around the world, and many of them removing them from their daily rituals and taking the next step, which would be making them illegal or invalidating them or kind of disassociating themselves from that. Do you feel like the rationale behind that is that they're just trying to create this protected layer of knowledge, or why do you think that was the step away from that direct connection?
Entheogens can open you up to the possibility that the reality you thought was real is not real. That there are other realities. And as such, it is a threat to the structures that control us as a society. On the other hand, the entheogen is equally dangerous, because if it were prescribed by the societies that control us as something required in order to fit into the society so that we are all homogeneous, it would not liberate us from the cave, but it would imprison us. Is that clear? And Aldous Huxley and Brave New World used Soma that way.
Anyone else? Tyler?
Maybe I'm not the only one, but I've experimented a bit with Amanita muscaria in this region, like the yellow, kind of orange variety, and while it has like some interesting effects, I wouldn't say I experienced anything that was like approaching visionary or entheogenic. And I know Hamilton Morris, like in some of his recent work, kind of has some questions about, was this actually used as a visionary substance? and also just the fact that the muscimol is very hard to extract, and also it's slightly neurotoxic. So what do you think the ancients had some chemical process that they were doing to change the molecule or extract the molecule in some way, or what do you think? Or do you know people that have had visionary experiences just from the straight mushroom?
It definitely was something that was controlled by the priests and priestesses who had special knowledge. Gordon Wasson experimented with Amenta muscaria several times, and nothing happened until finally, with an Ojibwe shaman, Kiwe Dinokwe, he was initiated and had the experience. So it requires the correct preparation, and it's not easy. The right dosage, but also the correct preparation.
On the other hand, Amanita muscaria is very common in Austria. I'm sure you know. It's even a symbol of Christmas. You get little Christmas decorations of Amanita. And I've known a number of Austrian people who have just taken it recreationally and had very powerful experiences.
We know that Freud was a mushroom hunter, and from an account by his son, he knew that you're not supposed to look for the mushroom, you have to let it find you. And the mushroom that they particularly were happy to find was Amanita muscaria. We do not know whether he peeled the cap off in order to make it edible, or whether he had an experience like that of the delusions of the patients he was studying. My original interest in mythology and so forth was the study of psychology, and I was fascinated with the visionary accounts of psychotics and delusional people. And my first expectation when I took an entheogen was that I would experience that sort of thing. Any psychiatrist or psychologist would certainly want to know what the patient has experienced. And so Freud probably did eat the mushroom, but would never say it. Jung had the same experience. You know more that he probably did have peyote, at least, in visual experience. But again, he kept it secret. But I think in the Red Book, published after he died, more evidence of his own drug experiments came out.
Can you speak a little bit more about the synthesis of the muscimol and the muscarine through the bladder into the urine, and then the collection, and then maybe actually reducing that down in prison that way, smearing it?
I had a former student whose wife got breast cancer, and they tried various kinds of therapy, and they became involved with Ayurvedic medicine. And one of the procedures in Ayurvedic medicine is that you drink your own urine. In order to make this palatable, you drink your own urine rather than somebody else's. Although in initiation, you drank other people's urine, but you find it less repulsive to drink your own urine, and it's less repulsive if you don't eat certain things and the urine doesn't smell unpleasant. So it can really be quite nice. But the interesting, but the interesting thing is why it's explained that the enzymes and hormones of the body aren't completely used up, and so you're recycling them and getting more of the good stuff from your own body. So it's a natural way of healing yourself, except that it was a procedure in Ayurvedic medicine that goes back to the drinking of the soma urine. Wasson was very excited when he found a passage where John Dee said, "I drank my urine this morning." But it's part of is part of the health procedure, but where did the idea come from? And was it originally because the amanita metabolite is apparently a better source of the experience than the original ingestion?
I've read about how the monks used to shave their head, chafe it.
Yes, was that so that they could apply a dermal application of an entheogen? Probably.
A young child, you feed the young child with a pure body, you drink it.
Yeah. The membranes of the head are a good place to be absorbed. Some drugs, as you probably know, like DMT, if you ingest it, it will work. But if you put it in NaOI, that inhibits the destruction of the drug by the gastric juice, so you have to put the two of them together. But most people don't know that you could also apply it as a dermal application, and then you don't have to worry about the NaOI. Did anyone know about this? No, of course not. I don't know if you know that the color purple in antiquity comes from the sea snail, the murex. It is a sign of royalty. If it's a sign of royalty, why do people have power? Because God supports them, and God's sacrament supports them. The Holy Roman Emperor was appointed by the Pope. It's religion that gives you authority, and the sacrament of the religion. The sanctity and empowerment of the color purple derives from the murex, and the murex is a source of DMT. And if you apply it dermally, because it turns it purple, if you apply it to parts of your body that are really absorbent, like the anus and the vagina, the armpits and the head, repulsive, isn't it? But they didn't know about that. There's a myth about how the color purple was discovered, and that is Heracles had a dog. He usually doesn't have a dog, but he had a dog, and he was walking with his dog by the sea, and the dog took up the murex and his mouth turned purple. Why a dog? A dog is a wolf. It implies a very ancient initiation in which you become a wolf and a werewolf. No one knew about that, of course, and yet Raphael had a patron. This is a repulsive myth. Who wants to have that? But this patron, the only painter that would pay to paint in the Renaissance, this patron wanted a painting of Heracles with his dog with the mouth turned purple, because so it looks as though the patron knew about this. Well, otherwise, why would you want this repulsive myth painted? And a myth that almost nobody knows.